Notice how I made that comment before I hit recording? So,
Notice that.
yeah, that way those guys can't hear me. So, all right, guys, welcome to Wapiti Wednesday for Wednesday, June 18th. It is that time of year where the question just starts coming up. Michael, I got to put my vacation in. What's the best week? And I'm like, I don't know because I haven't even put my vacation request in yet, so I guess I better do some research and get that done. So, tonight's topic is what is the best week to hunt elk in 2025? But we have some added information this year, so let's dive into it as usual. We have our wonderful handy dandy little breakdown, and we're just going to jump right into it. So, based on rut behavior, the ideal window in most western states falls September 18th through the 25th. Now, we all know that the autumn equinox, September 22nd, is kind of what triggers the rut, and most cows are bred within a 7 to 10 day window of that. So the 18th to the 25th puts this 22nd right in the middle of the window. Now, why this week works so well, and we're going to break it down into several different things. So, peak rut. So, bulls are highly vocal, bugling frequently to locate and defend cows. They're more likely to come into calls during this time, especially challenge bugles and estrus, because of their dominance behavior. And bulls are often less cautious during this time of year because they are more focused on cows than hunters. Also, this time of year, you have cooler temps, which means less bedded time during the day, which means your midday movements increase. The other factor on this is the moon phase. So we're just going to stop sharing and we're going to go over to my favorite moongiant.com. So now, do you guys remember last year how we had two full moons during September?
Mhm.
God, look at this beautifulness. We only have one, and it's on September 7th. So if you really look at the last half of the month, man, it gets pretty dang dark. So, and I mean, really, kind of talked about, you know, that 19th to 28th. That's kind of what I'm focusing for my long hunt. Friday the 19th to Saturday or to Sunday the 28th. Good dark nights, good movement, cooler temps. If weather cooperates, this is lining up to be an epic week during that week. Now, I haven't really dove into Farmer's Almanac too much to see what the winter forecast is, but what I have seen so far is it's showing it's going to be a pretty normal winter. So it shouldn't be too long, but those things can always change. So now let's kind of talk about the other weeks. So, here in Idaho, we are August 30th to September 30th. So that first weekend will be Labor Day weekend, which is the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. Pretty dang bright nights. But midday activity can be really, really good during that time. I think the 12th, 13th, and 14th are going to be fairly quiet. Okay. I think the 12th, 13th, and 14th, I think that weekend is going to be fairly quiet. And now that Greg's jumping in, I'm going to have to jump back in and do this all again just because, Greg is going to ask me questions and stuff and he's going to want to know all this. Now he's muted anyways. So he can watch the replay. So 5th, 6th, 7th, decent bugling activity, especially midday. 12th, 13th, 14th, you still got some pretty bright nights. And I think that weekend's going to be fairly quiet as far as bugles go, because really I'm looking at it that the bulls are going to have their cows rounded up, and so that weekend they're basically just going to be staging, waiting for those cows to start coming into estrus. Even though it's going to be quiet with responses, the 12th, 13th, and 14th will be a really good time to set up and do blind calling routines, and you will have success without coming in quietly. Starting from the 19th on, things are going to get really vocal. So you're going to have a lot of daytime activity just because it's so dark at night. So it's not going to be years past where it's been bright at night during this time frame and they've been able to rut at night when we're all sleeping. No, they're going to be forced out of the shadows and into the sunlight where we can play and enjoy. All right, back to our sheet. Okay. Weather considerations. So the other reason I like that 19th through, we're gonna call it we'll stay with the 18th through the 25th, even though I'm saying 19th through the 28th, just because that's when I'm hunting. So cooler morning temps. So you guys have heard me talk about barometric pressure just a little bit, but keep in mind if barometric pressure is going down, elk movement and activity goes up. Not only their physical activity, but also their vocalization activity goes up too. Now, if storms, if we do get some storms during September where we get those drops, those cool mornings, bulls often bugle more before and right after the weather events. So watch barometric pressure, especially within that. So within that window that I've told you is going to be the best week, you can have some days in there that are hotter than others. And that's based on the barometric pressure or if fronts are coming in and moving out. So keep an eye on that. So, all right, here's a little bit of useless information. So high elevation bulls. So if you are hunting areas, 10, 11,000 feet plus, high elevation bulls often rut earlier than lower elevation bulls. Reason being is because the higher elevations cool down faster and they kind of start and also get snowfall earlier, which means they start their winter migration earlier. So lower elevation or thicker timber may delay rut action slightly because that thicker timber can sometimes hold pockets of heat in. And because of the thicker timber, the light coming from that autumn equinox, the equal amount of day and night, has a harder time penetrating the thicker timber, and it doesn't bounce off the cow's eyes, which really triggers that rut. All right, we're going all out this year. Idaho, Montana peak bugling will be September 15th through the 25th. Colorado, New Mexico, I'm going to say this year it's going to hit hard September 20th through the 30th. Greg, I'm just waiting for you to write those dates down before I scroll. Because I know you're going to...
I'm not worried about writing them down. I'm going to print this off later.
Oh, that's if I include this in the email.
Oh, that's right. Did I pay my bill yet?
Yeah. Well, and I know you're going to hold me to these dates because you like doing that. So, all right. Calling strategy by this week. So during that peak time, always location bugles at dawn. And because of the increased bugling activity, don't be afraid to mix challenge bugles in. Don't be afraid to get aggressive during this time, especially if you are in an area that has a high bull to cow ratio. Take advantage of that. Use the challenge bugles to your advantage. The thing to remember with that is don't go too aggressive too soon, too fast. Mimic, match, be same level or slightly below on the intensity and slowly increase that up as he goes up. Don't escalate your aggression level until he starts escalating. So the estrus wine, Buzz Mew, the long Mew, those that are in there that are part of the breeding sequence, those are great for drawing in satellite bulls. If you just want to fill an elk tag, focus on the cow vocalization portion of the breeding sequence. Don't even worry about adding a bull into it. Just focus on the cows. So, okay. Tactics for this week. Be in position before daylight. Leave camp in the dark, come back in the dark. The more time you spend on the mountainside, the better off you're going to be. Now, there is one caveat to that. And Mr. Jason Nelson and I talked about this last week before he went out on his trail camera. Because if you're basically sitting there and you have a travel corridor in your area and the elk don't go through that area until 8:45, you don't want to go bebopping through there at 6:30. So know your area, learn your area. So, focus on travel corridors between bedding and feeding areas to move through and get to those areas. Remember, the closer you get to the bedding areas, the more those elk are going to settle down and the more time you have to actually work them. So if you're in position by daylight and you're waiting on them to come up and meet you in that area, you are going to have a much better time and a much longer window to call to them, work them, and basically get to a shot opportunity. If you're in the travel corridors chasing them up the mountain, man, they're going to go silent and go to bed long before you actually get up there. Hunt all day, especially if pressure is low and wind allows it. Remember, mid-time madness. It's one of the greatest times to kill elk, and most people are back in camp. This is the AHA. I know we've never talked about this, but remember, expect bulls to circle downwind because they want to smell you first. So, not really. It's actually see you first, hear you second, smell you third. So, just had to see if anybody was paying attention. All right. So, if you cannot hunt the 18th through the 25th, what other options do we have? So September 10th through the 17th, you got pre-rut. Bulls are separating from bachelor groups, sparring less vocal. This is actually more like September 1st to the 17th can happen in that larger window. Some areas it happens earlier, other areas it happens late. You also have the post-peak rut, September 26th to October 5th. Bulls are typically more call shy and tired, but they're easier to pattern because they don't have all the cows, they don't have all the craziness of the rut. So a lot of times the bigger bulls have kind of pulled themselves away from the herds and just kind of starting to isolate to recover. One thing about this post-peak rut, lost calf sounds work extremely well. So mid to late October, you can get the second rut, which you can get some pretty good bugling activity within that second rut time frame. So, all right. Now, best week by objective. What are you wanting? What are you looking for? If you're wanting the best calling response and those in-your-face screaming opportunities, September 8th to the 25th is the window that I'm going to say is going to be the peak rut and the best time for those really good calling interactions. Your biggest bulls, your best shot on the biggest bulls are going to be September 12th through the 20th. Reason being is they already have their herd pretty much gathered up. They have their cows, but none of these cows are coming into estrus. So they're still looking for cows, but they're also still defending the cows that they have already gathered from other bulls. So you've got a great window right there to go after a big herd bull. If you're just meat hunt, September 22nd to the 30th, you can also get some pretty good herd bull interaction at this time just because the rut is kind of starting to wind down. They haven't pulled away from the herd yet. They are still looking for those last few cows to breed. Good time to focus on it. Solo hunting advantage, September 16th through the 21st. Less pressure during the middle of the week. And here endeth the lesson. Thought we'd do something different this year and kind of throw some different stuff in there. What you think?
Yeah,
Thoughts,
good.
comments, concerns? Kurt, saw you shaking your head a few times.
All right, that was extremely helpful. Actually, I feel it was extremely helpful because I do base everything off of elk's smell,
Yep,
so that makes sense that they do want to see you, hear you first before they circle downwind.
yep. Greg, Jim, Sandy, Jason.
It was good.
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
good.
I love that 18th date. That's the last day of season for me.
The 18th is?
Yeah,
Oh,
Washington is the 6th through the 18th.
that's right. You got the earliest. So
Yeah, ours starts on the 12th. So,
you can get a
Yeah,
few
they
dark
they
nights in
they
there,
make it
Sandy.
so they avoid the rut if they can here. So
Yeah, the peak rut, but you'll get some. Most of your season's going to be bright. I really think you're going to be want to focus on some midday activity.
yeah, I've got a couple areas that have real good wallows, and I'm thinking I'm going to stick near those for midday.
Yeah, might be.
didn't you say you had one last year and you're going to hit again this year?
Yeah, yeah, I was sitting wallows a lot last year.
Mm, okay.
But
Well,
I found a really good one this last year that I'm probably going to put a tree stand on because I'm still having knee trouble. So hiking too much is giving me problems.
did you get yourself the pack wheel yet?
I didn't.
Oh, we haven't either. So yeah, and actually after setting trail cameras last weekend and having the conversation with Bryce, I don't think we're going to get the pack wheel because he's got it stuck in his head that he's just going to mount a pair of handlebars onto my back and he's just going to ride me up on the mountain. For those of you that don't know, I started doing testosterone treatments. So
Oh,
12 weeks ago.
how's
So
that going?
um, my testosterone level went from 400 to almost 1300.
Man,
So have you put the car down yet?
No. So we're adjusting. 1300 is a little higher than what we wanted to be. Our target was 900, so we're backing that off just a little bit. So that's why when he said, "Oh, 900, perfect. I'm putting a pair of handlebars on your back and I'm riding you up the mountain." So,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So, well, Jason, how'd it go?
Good. I wore myself out two different places that you know about scouting, but we got trail cams in place and I saw my first bull on a shot today because we've got the wireless ones. So that was cool.
First area or second area?
First area, there was
Okay.
actually a moose and then a bull within 2 days of each other. And I've got two cameras that had a signal that are not reporting from the second area. But the cool thing about the second area was, even though it was total deep timber,
Yeah.
it was a lot easier to find tracks.
Was
Up.
it?
Yeah, so I'm really going, that area's got to play out, right? It's with all that track
Yeah.
history, it's got to.
Did you head up the gated road
Yeah,
and
yeah.
start finding trails off that gated road and
Yeah, we did. We went back to, well, not off so the one gated road, we decided not to go as far back because we were so gassed from the first day.
not
We were
right.
gassed.
Okay.
Um, so we went a shorter gated road that
Okay.
was maybe a mile and a quarter. We biked it and then we hiked in from there, probably about a mile and a half.
Okay.
That tells you how gassed we were. But once we got back around water, um, and the minimal amount of feed that was in the deep timber, we started seeing tracks. So very, very cool. Not too far from those knobs and those benches that you
I
put.
was just going to ask if you made it to
Yeah,
those knobs and benches, and so
we
that's where the
did.
tracks were.
Not too far from there. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so here's my question then. Your buddy that I let tune in free, that basically showed right there that I wasn't completely full of it. Why has he not joined Elk Calling Academy yet? What's his frickin' problem?
Exactly. Exactly. He should be paying my fee for the next year.
So what we're talking about is Jason and I jumped on and did a an e-scouting kind of lesson. Just he pulled up, he screen shared, pulled up his maps, and we just kind of started talking. Looking at his maps, I was looking at areas that drew my attention where I would go in and look, and possibility areas that would want to put cameras in, and I mean, now Jason had already done homework and already had the areas picked, and just we kind of broke it down a little bit more into that, and I let his buddy join in for free just to into the lesson, just to kind of talk about it a little bit. And so, but no, good that good was the success, and already getting animals on the camera too. So
So I've got two. I don't know about the rest of you guys, but in 3.5 days, two animals, is that low? Is that normal?
it varies. So you will have some areas you will have some areas that has a lot of traffic right now. Then you have other areas like the area where I put camera number two that had the biggest bulls last year. As the summer progressed, we got more activity on it. So, and in fact, after the first 3 weeks, Bryce wanted to pull it. He was like, "No way, this thing's just a joke. There's nothing on it." Just because he went in and just swapped the card, and he's like, "There's no sign." And then we started looking at the camera or looking at the pictures, and it's like, "Oh no, there's actually a couple going through there." And then when he went back in the second time, he did pull the camera because he was like, "No, nothing has been in there." And then that's when I started going through the picture. And the very next morning, my wife and I got up and actually drove up there and hiked back in there to put that camera right back into where it was and add a second one. But that's where we kind of talked about too that if you've got two cameras and you're getting more activity on this one and not so much on this one, that's where you can start taking this one and move it closer to this one, move it down trail or move it up trail, and start, especially if you have this camera kind of here in the middle, because then you can move this camera from way over here. Maybe I want to move it to see where they're coming from or a little bit more information about where they're going to, and just start building that piece of the puzzle out.
Makes sense. So I had a question for you on the phasing there for the weeks. It seems that you've built that off the moon phases where
Uh-huh.
the elk would be most active, but I've also heard outfitters say that it's rut is very driven by temperature.
Rut's not driven by temperature.
Okay.
Well,
Ish.
it's a fickle one. So the autumn equinox is what really triggers the rut, which is equal amount of nighttime and daylight, and it's how the light reflects off the pupils of the eyes, and that's what really triggers the process. What they're talking about the temperature, I mean, obviously if it's 80, 85 degrees, because remember back we talked about elk's temperatures and them having to regulate the temperature to survive.
Right.
Well, if it's 80, 85 degrees out during the day, but 55, 60 degrees at night, that bull's going to do his rutting activity 55, 60 degrees at night. He's going to be a lot more active at night than he is during the day. So it doesn't matter if it's 90 degrees or 9 degrees. It doesn't matter if there's one person in the woods or 100 people in the woods. That window around the autumn equinox is when cows are bred. The other factors affect whether it's daytime activity or nighttime activity.
Hmm.
So, you can get some variations on that window, depending on what the winter's looking like. If it's going to be a long, hard winter, then you're going to have a late rut.
Yep.
So
Cool.
the guides will also tell you too that if you're not seeing anything during the day, you need to sit down and eat a sandwich, because as soon as you sit down and eat a sandwich, elk will be present. That is an old guide's trick right there.
Yeah, that's the truth too.
It is. It is. Yeah, not seeing anything, start eating.
Yeah.
They'll show up. So
I don't know. I eat a lot on the mountain, and I haven't got one yet.
well, that's because you actually have to stop eating at some point so that they know, okay, he's no longer hunting, he's actually eating. So
Oh, the one continuous meal the whole time doesn't count.
correct. You're not in the Shire anymore. This isn't second breakfast or mid morning or whatever the hobbits do when they're transporting the ring. So, okay. Any other questions?
No.
Oh, that was good. That was good.
Well, this will work because my phone's been going off. I forgot that my son had a birthday party tonight. We were supposed to have him over there at 7 o'clock. Oops.
Uh-oh.
It's all right.
So
So,
late.
all right, guys. Well, thank you for tuning in. As always, keep calling, keep practicing. More importantly, though, have fun. And we will see you guys in 2 weeks on the next Wapiti Wednesday live Q&A. And I will upload this. I'll try to get it uploaded tomorrow. I do have a lesson tomorrow night, but I'll try to get it uploaded, and I will email everybody out along with the Google Doc. You guys like the Google Docs? Is that better than? Okay, perfect. Okay, then we'll just stay with that. So, all right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks.